So, back in 2001, my then partner convinced me that I wanted to ride a motorbike. That wasn't very hard. The bit that was quite hard was that she convinced me that what I wanted was an East German commuter bike. These bikes were pretty uncommon, so the one that I got could be described as a shed. And it tried to kill me. It tried to kill me pretty much on a daily basis. If I could get it started in the morning to go to work, then it would try and kill me on the way to work. And then it would do the same on the way home. So when I finally passed my motorcycle test and I could buy a proper bike, and my then partner offered me the same bike, but a bigger one, I went, oh yeah, that'll be great. I'll ride that. Be perfect. So I spent a few days pulling it out of the weeds where it was sat, because it had been sat there for a few years, and I got it running, and I rode it. In Britain, you have to take them for a roadworthiness test every year, and I rode it to the test, which it failed, and then on the way back, it tried to kill me. And I thought, this is probably a bad sign. So I carried on riding it, because I'm an idiot. And then, after a few months of riding it, and it didn't have third gear. Third gear had broken, which is how it had ended up in the garden. But my solution to that was that I just didn't use third gear. I would ride up the street and do first, second, and then rev it like mad, and then drop into fourth, and it would chug up the street. So I was doing that one day, and I was coming around a corner, and as I came around the corner, it dropped out of fourth, because fourth had now stopped working. And I sort of wandered over the road, nearly dying, and I thought, this is really bad. So I kept riding it. And then it stopped charging the battery, which meant that I couldn't use the turn signals, and I couldn't use the lights. And that was kind of a problem that was sort of breaking the camel's back. So I decided to take it on a 120-mile journey down the freeway from where I lived in Bristol to London, where there was one specialist who could rebuild them. And I took it there, and there is a little story involving the police, them having to stop the freeway because it broke down in the fast lane, and me having to run across the motorway and then having to cry to get out of the ticket that the officer was going to write. But I'm not going to tell you that. About a month later, they called me, and they said, your bike's ready. And it was a cold, wet day. And I thought, right, fine, I'll go get it. And I dropped my partner off at work in the car, and then I drove home, got to the railway station, got on the train, and went the 120 miles into London, and I picked up my bike. And it still looked like a heap, but now it had a new engine, and it had a new gearbox, and it had new electrics, so it wasn't going to try and catch fire anymore, so that was quite good. And it actually started. I got out of the shop, and I kicked it, and it started, and I thought, this is amazing. This is what it's like if you have a decent bike. And I got on and I rode, and it's 120 miles. And you can't go fast on a new bike that's a two-stroke, because then you die. So I had a top speed of 55. The limit in England is 70. Most people do 80 or 90. I'm coming down the freeway. It is now pouring with rain. It's getting dark, and I'm getting more and more dejected and cold and wet. And in the distance, I see the bridge for Swindon. Nobody ever is pleased to see the bridge for Swindon, but I felt indescribable joy. I have 45 minutes left. I can survive 45 minutes of this. And I pull out to overtake someone. I don't remember who I was overtaking. And I can't imagine who it was, because I was doing 55 and they should be doing at least 70. But I remember looking at the speedometer and it said 55. And I said, okay, chugging past them. And then I got a little bit of a surprise, because the engine seized. And not a little bit. When they took the bike apart later, they said, yeah, it kind of had a massive engine seizure. And when you seize the engine on a motorbike, you're trained. You pull in the clutch, because then the back wheel can roll. But it was wet. Did I say it was raining? And by the time I had the clutch in, the back of the bike had swung and started what's called a fishtail. So the back of the bike was down on its right side. And I know this because my foot was underneath the foot peg, and there's a hole in my boot where the full weight of the bike and 55 miles an hour of tarmac met. Then the bike did the other part of a fishtail. So you go from this to this. Again, you're still traveling more or less the speed you were before. And at this point, the left-hand side of the bike is scraping down the road. And I think, oh, fuck, I'm going to die. And then a small part of my hindbrain went, just let go of the bike. So I did. And now I'm rolling down the motorway, just in my bike gear. The bike is sliding off into the distance. I can see the flash of the light going. The other thing I can see is the flashes of light as the cars behind me get closer. There's maybe 2 seconds between me and the car that I was thinking, oh, they were a bit close just before I came off. And I come to a stop, and I look, and I can see them gaining on me, and I can see the white lines for the lane divider between the fast lane and the centre lane. So I position myself down there, and the cars are going past, and then I see a gap, and I think, right, I can't stand up because I hurt. So I rolled from the centre lane of the motorway all the way to the median, and I know I hit the median because it was gravel, and it was wet, and it was cold. And after a moment of lying there, I thought, fuck me, I've survived. I'm alive. And then I thought, Jesus Christ, I hurt. So I stood up, and I started walking up the hard shoulder of the freeway. And in Britain, we have emergency phones. So I was sort of hoping that I'd find one. And a woman pulled over, and she got out of her car, and she looked at me, and she said, are you all right? And I just said, I don't think so. And I sat down, and the ambulance came, and they took me to hospital. And the most surprising thing, I didn't break anything. They sent me home the same night.